I've got a couple pictures I want to show you to introduce our devotion this morning. Anybody starting to figure out a little bit of a theme here? Okay, we'll keep going. One more and see if you notice anything different. The door is open. Okay, so you've been paying attention to that Bible verse. I love the metaphor that God led the Apostle John to use there. I have placed before you an open door. And think about how maybe someone has used that picture or something similar to it with you in your everyday life. Maybe they said something like this to you. The door of opportunity is open. You better walk through that door before it closes. We have a time now like we've never had before, not only in our country, but also in the world, where God has given us an open door opportunity to share Jesus with those with special needs and with their families. I'm going to give you the big picture first of all, and then I'll come back and talk a little bit more about what we alluded to earlier. Right now, the statistics show us that 80%, or 8 million of the 10 million individuals with special needs in our country, do not get the opportunity that you and I are having right now. And if they were to speak to you honestly, they and their family, they would tell you not only do they not get the opportunity, they don't feel welcome. I'm going to share with you a real-life story from one of our Wells congregations from about 2 years ago. I'm going to tell you right up front, the story is not easy to listen to, but it also is going to illustrate to you what many of these families deal with. So about 2 years ago, a family who at that time had a 12-year-old son on the autism spectrum walked into one of our Wells congregations. And if you understand anything at all, for many of those on the autism spectrum, walking into an unfamiliar place for them is terrifying. And then the different noises and that type of thing are often a difficulty for them. I don't know what it was on that particular morning, but something set that young man off. And one of the things I do when I train our Jesus Cares volunteers is I say to them, we need to be understanding of and accepting of the challenges that our friend with special needs face. Whenever I share that, there's one particular individual that comes to mind. For 5 years, when I served up at Faith Lutheran Church in Fond du Lac, I was privileged to lead this service on a monthly basis. One of the young men that attended that service was a young man who was taller than I am by the name of Huey. Huey was nonverbal. You always knew when Huey was there because he made these very distinguishable guttural sounds. But whether it was regular worship or Jesus Cares worship, Huey never sat down. All he did was pace back and forth across the space where we had our worship the cross service, or in church he would yell in our section, he's pacing back and forth. And a lot of people would go, okay, Huey's just pacing back and forth, he's not paying attention. And so all of a sudden he gives probably the best answer you could give to one of the questions I just asked. So that's the understanding part. Back to the story that I was sharing with you. That did not happen, unfortunately, on that Sunday at the church that I'm referring to. Instead of welcoming that young man and his family, one of the members of the congregation came up and said to his parents, if that's the way your son is going to act, please do not bring him back here anymore. Think about it, not only thinking that, but actually saying it. So when families who have loved ones with special needs find that there is a worship service that's specifically designed for their loved one, it's a place where they're welcomed, invited, and find a whole lot of their friends, some pretty incredible things happen. just talk to some of the folks who are our regular volunteers and regular attendees at your service here. And it's been neat to see some of the pretty neat things that happen. So let's take it down to a local level. I shared with you earlier what the vision is that Pastor Zarling has, that when God grants you a second pastor, that we would begin this service on a regular basis down at the Racine campus. And we did some work probably 2.5 years ago and found out that there's a lot of opportunity. One of the things that we're going to need, though, because if you look at the core of Jesus Cares volunteers, and I look around the church this morning, I think most of the ones who help with your program here are here this morning. So what we are looking for is some more folks to be involved as volunteers. What does that mean? We're not going to ask you to leave the service right away so you can breathe a sigh of relief with that. But one of the things is you look at some of our Jesus Cares programs, we do have some of our male leaders in the congregation who might lead the service. But we're looking for folks to simply come and be friends. Sit with those who attend, welcome them. One of the neat things is that after every service we have refreshments. I've had folks who have never seen it before. They go, "Is that all you Lutherans do is eat?" And I said, "No, maybe, yeah." But again, that's a chance to visit and bond with it. Needing somebody to play music, to help have someone who does that. One of the other things is the neat thing is that this is something that every member of your congregation could be involved in. I think of some of the Jesus Cares programs I visit where it is the children of the adults who are involved that are the ones who are handing out the instruments or handing out the name tag. And it's just really neat to see how they get to become friends and good acquaintances with those who attend the Jesus Cares program. So if you've never thought about it before, and if you're at all maybe interested, on the table out of the entryway, I've got a sign-up sheet. I would ask you to put your name on there. We've got a good number of folks who signed up last Sunday from down at the Racine campus, and then what Pastor Zarling and I will do is set up a training time, and then we'll figure out how we move forward with it. I've got one more picture I want to show you this morning. And I know we're well past Easter, but I want you to think back maybe to Easter Sunday morning when you saw that picture or something like it up on the screen or maybe on the front of the service folder. And then I want you to think 40 days after Easter. So 40 days after Easter is Jesus' ascension, right? And think about the very last words that Jesus spoke before he ascended into heaven. Matthew chapter 28, verses 19 and 20. I want to share with you just this morning the first part of verse 19, and I'm guessing this may be rather familiar to some of you. Jesus said, "Go and make disciples of all nations." And think about how many times you've maybe memorized that verse. Maybe you've heard it read here in worship. You've heard it preached on here in worship. You've read it in your own personal Bible reading. You studied it in Bible class with your fellow Christians. And think about what is probably for many of us the idea in our mind when we hear "go and make disciples of all nations." Okay, that means we don't just share Jesus in the city of Racine or in Racine County or in southeastern Wisconsin. That's why we have WELL's home missions to share Jesus all across the country, and that's why we have WELL's world missions to share Jesus all around the world. That's part of it. I'd like you to think about those very familiar words in a different way as well. When our Savior said, "Go and make disciples of all nations," he was not only telling us to share him with people of all nationalities. He was also telling us to share him with people of all abilities. One of my favorite ways to refer to my friends with special needs is differently able. And I do that for a very specific reason. Because if you notice, so often when people meet an individual with special needs, what's the first thing they focus on? What's different about them, or what can't they do? I instead like to focus on what can they do. And that is probably one of the greatest joys that I've had. And you look at, you talk to our over 1,800 Jesus Cares volunteers, they will tell you the amazing things that those who attend our Jesus Cares programs can do. And probably one of the first things that they're going to talk to you about is their simple, childlike faith and the willingness to share that faith anywhere, at any time, without any reservation. Think about how hesitant most of us are to share our faith, right? Especially with the climate and the culture that's going on in our world today. If we were to share our faith in certain circumstances, we know that we'd probably get our heads bit off, or we'd have people challenge us or something like that. I could tell you story after story after story of ways that I've seen our Jesus Cares participants share their faith in a way that would probably put us to shame, but also in a way that is a phenomenal example for us. So I would ask all of you to prayerfully consider, we're going to say the Bible verse a couple more times, what can you do to help Water of Life's Jesus Cares program walk through that open door? What can you do, whether it's your prayers or your participation, to help it grow? Could you maybe invite people? There may be folks that you know that you could invite to come and be a part of it. That would be a wonderful thing. I just ask you to prayerfully consider what your role might be.